Hey there, quick explanation about what you're getting yourself into. This is basically me testing out casual to see if it's as good or bad as its detractors and benefactors like to say it is. So I'm testing a couple of things. One of the things is how many rolls I get, how much toxicity I encounter, and how many of the games are infested with cheaters. The second is the total amount of time I spend in each section of the game. That means in the queue, the game itself, the downtime experienced after each game, and the intermissions you're put to before a game starts. Alright, with that quick explanation out of the way, enjoy the video. I worked really hard on it. The first game was in the good old game mode of King of the Hill on the map Lakeside. A fine map, but the game itself was not fine, for it was our first roll. Not a great start. Rolls on King of the Hill maps are interesting since King of the Hill is locked by time. I simply classify it as when one team is never able to take the point from the other. And despite a valiant effort consisting of a variety of tactics and push attempts, we couldn't break through the enemy's offensive hold and the game ended in a loss. Immediately, there were people referencing Team Scramble.
They should bring back Scramble.
A mechanic which, you guessed it, would scramble the teams in case the current teams were too unbalanced with one team absolutely dominating the other. This was something that players could vote to activate back in the days of quick play. It's also present in community servers like Uncletopia. I'm guessing the reason why it's not present in modern day casual mode is to stop possible exploitation of it in case your team was at all losing. I personally think that a team scramble mechanic would be pretty valuable in modern day casual mode, as it would do a lot to prevent stagnant games like this and rolls in general. And honestly, I don't see exploitation of it being that big of a problem unless like 12 people decide to be assholes. Once that game was over, I decided to stay in the same server and was once again placed in Lakeside, and this match fared much better. The first round was a fantastic back and forth that literally went as close as it possibly could have, ultimately ending with the enemy team just barely getting the last cap. The next round started just as promising, but once the enemy team captured the second point, they apparently decided that this was a perfectly reasonable time to lock the f*** in and keep us confined to our spawn for the rest of the game. And believe it or not even the unmatched power of the legendary Master Chief could get us through this one. The third game was actually my first time playing on Megaton, basically the Nuketown equivalent of Team Fortress 2 maps, in function, not in notoriety or fame or anything like that. I decided to start off as Scout, and that worked pretty well for the first half of the round. Unfortunately, after they managed to capture the point themselves, they were able to lock us down really effectively through their medic, some well-placed sentries, and for some reason, a sniper patrolling spawn with a Tribalman Shiv of all things as his weapon of choice. By the next round, I had switched to medic, and even though things weren't doing too hot at the beginning, there is nothing that a well-placed Uber can't fix and well-spreaded heals can't maintain. The help of a pretty effective spy to keep their engineers at bay didn't hurt to keep us anchored to the point long enough to secure the W for this round either. The last round started with the enemies just rushing the point and then keeping up that momentum for the rest of the round. We simply weren't able to regroup and get our strength back up to be able to resist their defense, which resulted in an overall loss for Game 3. And my medic time has officially surpassed my pyro time, and it's beginning to look a lot like Dustbowl. You know, I actually usually don't like Dustbowl too much, which is strange because I don't think I've ever had a bad experience with the map. I think I was just getting put on it too much and was getting a bit tired of it. History lesson aside, this was a fun time. I was placed on defense in the last point and decided to go scout again. I just feel like I don't play him enough. And then proceeded to pop off so hard that I got my first ever accusation. To be fair to the accuser though, according to them, I was literally invisible, and with the technical reputation that Team Fortress 2 has, I don't doubt that for a second. Though we had a solid defense, we did eventually get pushed back to the last point, and then, despite a solid defense there as well, they were able to push there too and were able to capture said last point. Overall, this first round I took part in was a very fun game of just holding back waves of enemies and those sneaky little guys who attempt to do a master flank or achieve high ground. That's a certified GG would play again. And then the team switched. Though these rounds started pretty typical, once we got to the first point, which didn't really take long, that advantage got pressed extremely hard. For the first two rounds, there were some mad lads backcapping, which vastly expedited the process of winning the round. The last round took a little more doing to capture, but ultimately, through a series of ideas and plans that constantly, literally went perfectly, we were able to break through the hold they were trying to make before they even made it and win the game. The next game was a fantastic, intense push and pull, with the enemy team just barely being able to capture all the points, and the first one requiring a famous pub push in order to successfully break through our hold. Despite their consistently successful pushes, they weren't able to get to that last point. I attribute this to a series of very unfortunate events spurred on by a spy choosing to go down a very unfortunate escape route, leading me to find the nest that the engineer was attempting to build and a couple of stragglers, all of which are now, sadly, past tense. Well, that and me distracting like 1/4 of their team by being a mischievous little goober. Unfortunately, when it was our turns to attack, things didn't go quite as climactic. simply because they had a ton of stuff going for them. A BS sniper who not only whittled our offensive power but was also covered by the path of a sentry, which was itself covering the sniper because he could use it to pad his escape route, not to mention the fact that the sentry had effectively disabled any airborne tactics from being used, another fantastic sentry placement on the point which covered and was covered by a very effective medic who knew exactly when and where to use his Uber, and the fact that they had the frickin' server blight on their side. They covered their defensives so effectively that even if we were able to take down one or two of them, there were always more that were working just as effectively. As such, we couldn't successfully break through, resulting in a loss for that round. Fun fact, Sulfur is actually one of my favorite maps because of how unique it works and its good looks. Its structure has moments that incentivize teamwork as well as moments that offer more independent play, both of which Team Fortress 2 really excels in. And I love it when maps are able to fulfill both sides of TF2's gameplay at once.
Foreshadowing is a narrative device.
The next game was the first 5 CP, and usually this mode is notorious for having extremely long matches.
Sometimes foreshadowing is relatively obvious.
Yeah, this was not one of those games. This was a roll. I was even placed in the second round where my team had already gotten a win previously, so it seems that they were just completely dominant throughout the entire game. The first 2 points were pretty much gone instantly. They were able to hold off the last one pretty well with the help of a sentry, but once that thing went down, it was pretty much over for them. Also, this is where we encountered our first bit of toxicity, if you want to call it that. I personally don't, but I know that some people find this offensive, and that poor Heavy's day might have been made a little worse because of it, and that's no good. However, there is an equal chance that Heavy found it hilarious because Gamer Rage is pretty entertaining. The next game took place in a capture point map, which I don't think I've ever played before, Sulfur. Usually in a normal capture point game, you have to capture 1 point at a time, and the other points will be locked until you successfully capture the other ones. Sulfur differs from them because you can capture any point whenever and however you want. Want to split off from the group and see if one of the points is not being well defended? You can do that. Want to make a small pact with the medic and attempt to fend off the enemy team or attack with a big 2-person push? You can do that as well. This map equally incentivizes team play and moments of independence at the exact same time. Hey, that sounds familiar. Yeah, this is my new favorite map. This game, all in all, had a ton of micro events and silly moments that occurred all throughout the 3 rounds we played. And it helps that the teams were pretty equally balanced to allow all those rounds to happen, and as such, the need for all those moments to arise. Little teams and alliances sprouted up, plans formed, pop-offs were done. Hell yeah! Ore farmers were slaughtered, gamers were perturbed, it was a great time all around, and a very even game. Ultimately, my team was able to just barely capture all the points we needed before they were able to get one back, giving us the win. The next game was another 5 CP map, Granary, and other than absolutely annihilating this pyro during the intermission, the game itself was a pretty standard roll. They held us off a bit during the second round, but once we broke through the defenses they were trying to set, it was over for them. No doubt, this victory was due in part, and in full, to the most important character who debuts in this game.
Aloe Vera way, don't you hate when your aunties fucking blow up the group chat, bro?
Huh?
You get it, bro.
You're right. You need to keep this one in mind. Even though he's very integral to this game, he becomes very important in... Remember what I said about 5CP being notorious for allowing long games to happen? Let me put this in perspective for you. My recording for games 4 to 10 is 2 hours, 20 minutes, and 30 seconds long. This game starts at timestamp 1:10:30. It ends at timestamp 2:11:05. That is an hour and 45 seconds. And it's pretty safe for me to say that this is hands down one of the greatest games of Team Fortress 2 I have ever played. It has everything. Action, drama, comedy, heartbreak, character growth, loss, gain, and everything in between. And with that said, it manifested like this. Moving on from that, this game was the first Payload match, taking place in my second favorite looking map in the game, Phoenix. During the first round, which was nearing its end, I trolled a sniper, loved the thermal thruster, and committed several war crimes. In the attacking round, though they covered themselves pretty well with sentries, after loving the thermal thruster some more and taking advantage of my team's distraction, I was able to destroy their defensive setup on the first point, and then we proceeded to absolutely steamroll them the rest of the game. Quite the juxtaposition from the roller coaster that was Game 9, huh? All in all, these first 10 games were a good control set and test of how well the program I used to record the summaries works, which, by the way, it works perfectly. So long as I remember to switch from intermissions to the game starting, but that doesn't have any effect on the overall time spent actually being able to play, so it doesn't matter that much. But the data being more accurate is always a good thing. Before I get into that data, let's get into all the stuff I had to report manually first. So far, out of these first 10 games, I have encountered no cheaters, one instance of one chat message featuring behavior that could be considered toxic if you're extremely sensitive, and I would report that a whopping 4.5 out of 10 games I played were rolls. That 0.5 is from Dustbowl, as it was incredibly balanced when we were defending, but then it went incredibly one-sided when we switched to offense. That last metric is pretty bad, I'm not gonna lie to you. But those games were thankfully really short, and I was on the winning side for all but one of them, so it didn't affect my enjoyment of those games too much. Now for the percentage of time I spent on each point of the game on average. 51.1 seconds so far are spent in the queue on average. 31.1 seconds on average are spent in the game's downtime. Together, they accounted for about 5.28% of my overall playtime, where the game is actually unplayable. The intermission number is pretty screwed since for a while I forgot to proceed to the game segment on game 3 and 9, which is unfortunate since they are by far the longest games in their respective sessions. I'll see to fixing these discrepancies manually before I start the next session. But overall, 94.72% of the time I spent getting these 10 games was actually spent playing the game. No doubt those longer games definitely help with getting that number up there. So far, I have just been having a blast playing TF2. It's been a while since I've spent an extended amount of time on the game, just because I was too focused with work before, and now I'm too focused with YouTube. It's really reminded me why I fell in love with this game in the first place, and why I can't really go into playing many other games I do like this one. I'm excited to see what the other sessions have in store for me, but here's to hoping that there aren't as many roles next time around. Oh shit! Damn!